After the housing bubble burst, the number of vacant and abandoned buildings has grown across the country. What to do with these often beaten up and broken down dwellings has been a drag on city budgets, and now some legislators are looking to hold lending banks responsible. Drive through certain Chicago neighborhoods and it's nearly impossible not to come across a boarded up house.
There's 18,000 vacant buildings in the city. I mean, there's more vacant buildings than there are Starbucks in the country.
A peek inside one of these properties
it's pretty foul.
shows the structural damage and bad behavior
Beer bottles, magazines, pictures.
that can take over a once occupied home, causing problems throughout a neighborhood.
A vacant house has an effect on values, and that really affects all the neighbors when they want to refinance or when they want to sell their home. And ultimately, if this house falls apart, is torn down, it's going to bring everybody's values down. So, and on the flip side of that, if this house is cared for and taken care of for, it could lead the block towards positive values.
BRYAN ESENBERG of the nonprofit Neighborhood Housing Services of Chicago is contracted by the city to lead abandoned buildings through a process called receivership, first securing a home like this one with an eye on repairing it and getting it back on the market.
Really, the maintenance of these abandoned properties shouldn't be a problem that falls entirely on the city. And unfortunately, the tools that are out there to make these programs work are limited in their funding. But the size and volume of this issue is huge, and you really want to get everybody involved at the table and make them take responsibility.
The problem then is finding out who's involved and keeping them, not cities, on the hook for troubled buildings.
In 2010, we spent over $15 million to board up abandoned buildings in the city of Chicago. That's taxpayers' money.
Alderman Pat Dowell helped pass a strict amendment in Chicago that will now require banks holding mortgages on vacant properties to take charge.
From a moral perspective, they're responsible for these properties, even though they don't technically own them. Which is why we had the amendment.
But Chicago's solution to the abandoned buildings problem is not without its critics.
Legally, one would have to violate one law to comply with the ordinance. Well, there's actually several. So I think as a practical matter, it's not enforceable because it's legally not capable of being handled.
Richard Gottlieb of law firm DYKEMA contends that lending banks are not legally owners and indeed would have to break laws and trespass to meet the demands of the city.
If a lender has possession of the property and they want to rehab it and resell it, they're not going to board up the windows. They're going to go in and replace that broken window with a new window so they can sell it. That will add value. That's the way to go. But they're not going to do any of that unless they've got possession.
Foreclosure is the legal process which allows lenders to take possession. But the problem is that can take a long time, over 1.5 years in Illinois. Speeding up that process for abandoned buildings, then, could better address the vacant property problem.
The best solutions would be ones that went into partnership with the lenders and expedited foreclosures on vacant properties.
I agree with the banks on that. Fast tracking is definitely another way to tackle this problem and something that I support and am working to advocate for them.
Chicago is not alone in its efforts looking to hold lending banks responsible for abandoned properties. Similar ordinances have taken effect in Milwaukee, Boston, and Los Angeles.